10 years of the Belt and Road Initiative, we will take a look at how the projects are changing Central and Eastern Europe. Hello, I'm Mike Walter, sitting in for Anna Naidu, and this is The Heat. China is helping to connect Europe and Asia with its global development project, the Belt and Road Initiative. Hungary, the first European country to join the BRI, hails it as a clear success. The Hungary-Serbia Railway is a landmark Belt and Road project that is set to be completed in 2025. In Montenegro, a new billion-dollar Chinese-built highway is expected to provide a major boon for the small Balkan country. In southern Europe, BRI investment is also having a big impact. Since China's COSCO shipping bought into Greece's port of Piraeus, there has been huge development, and it is now a major trade hub at the crossroads of Asia, Europe, and Africa.
The world has to be connected, both physically and digitally. That is how markets will thrive. That is how prosperity will happen. What the Belt and Road is doing is connecting the world, enhancing the free movement of goods, services, and people. What we need to see is more multilateralism, more collaboration, more dialogue, more partnerships across the world in order to make sure that we are able to move the prospects of the sustainable development goal forward.
To continue our discussion, let's bring in our panel from Debrecen in Hungary. Sandor Kusai is a former Hungarian ambassador to China. Liang is chair professor in economics at Willamette University. She joins us from Portland. And from Beijing, Einar Tangen is a senior fellow at the Taihe Institute and chairman of Asia Narratives. I want to welcome all of you to the broadcast. And Ambassador, why don't I begin with you? Hungary, of course, as I mentioned, the first European country to sign on to the Belt and Road Initiative. That was back in 2015. The Prime Minister, Viktor Orban, traveled to China, attended the Belt and Road Forum. Here's what he had to say. Let's listen.
Our history, our country's history, proves that connectivity and international politics based on mutual respect will lead to peace and economic development. We want to restore a strong and competitive Europe. In order to achieve this goal, we should strengthen cooperation and connectivity instead of isolating ourselves. Distinguished Vice Premier Dean, Hungary stands ready to work together with China and all countries that support connectivity for common development.
Ambassador, talk to me about the importance of BRI to Hungary.
As the Prime Minister also said, it's first and foremost connectivity. Infrastructure, railway development, and with that goes investment into new technologies, digitalization of financial services, banking, and of course the green economy, the development of the green economy, building new production facilities for batteries, for electric cars, and all the related economic activities. For Hungary, it is a key element to keep and to be a center, a hub for connecting Asia and Europe. As Hungary is a rather small Central European country, which is landlocked, so we need all the possible ways and means for increasing our connectivity. And the Belt and Road Initiative is one of the best possibilities for doing that.
And Ambassador, bilateral trade, of course, has jumped as well, $15.5 billion in 2022 between these two countries. And when you kind of use that as a marker, 2022, we don't have, of course, have the numbers for 2023, but looking back in 2013, that's an 84% increase, which is significant. It's kind of the double whammy. It's not just development, but it's prosperity as well.
It's very important, especially under the present conditions, economic difficulties in Europe, in the European Union. It is a major factor, promotion, impetus for trade, for development of Hungary. The other major issue is not only the growth of trade, but also the growth of investments. Investments create jobs, create high quality, high paying jobs. And all these two factors, the trade and investment, together promote and give a big impetus to Hungary's economic development, social stability, and the whole development of the country in general.
Einar, the ambassadors made a number of key points about how this has benefited Hungary, but talk to me about the benefits for China.
Well, China is resource poor, so they have to import resources, add value, and then sell their products. And they've been very successful in creating a global supply chain that relies a lot on Chinese manufacturing. The BRI has two parts. One is economic, clearly. It's about trade without strings. But the second part is peace. China really does believe that if you have prosperity, that many of the root causes go to the inequalities that exist within countries and between countries. So at this juncture, China is really just trying to make sure that there's regional peace and that there's a blueprint for a world which is, as they keep saying, a future for all.
And you mentioned trade without strings. It also kind of gives China the toehold into Europe because, you know, there's been some resistance with some of the other European countries. Can you talk to us about how this might create better relations with European countries, this effort?
Well, one hopes. I mean, there's supposed to be a comprehensive investment a treaty, but that has not actually come to pass. Right now, the issues are not economic. Clearly, many of Europe's countries, especially when you get to Italy and Germany, are huge exporters to China, and they benefit from that. And Chinese goods are much cheaper, so they keep inflation down and low. But there are issues in terms of political issues, especially over Ukraine. And the U.S. has been pushing this idea that somehow China is a threat. So the question is, for Europe, at what point do they say that what they really need is economic development and that China is not a security threat? It is simply a partner that they have to negotiate with, but one that can bring mutual prosperity to both sides.
Liang, these investments in infrastructure have this goal of creating an interconnected world. How important is that for facilitating trade between Eastern European countries and also China, as well as other markets, perhaps?
Right, good to talk to you, Mike. So I think it's super important for BRI to build the groundwork, all these connectivities through sea, through land, and through the air. So one example is the China-Europe Railway Express. So with this, it connects 200 cities in over 25 European countries with China. So through these connectivities, many of the products could easily be shipped out from China and go to various countries in Europe, and it tremendously reduced the transport time from the previous 17 days to now about 10 or 12 days. And it also really saved a lot of transportation costs. So this is one example that these kinds of infrastructure help to promote connectivity and also help to promote trade. One interesting stats when I looked at, between 2016 and 2019, so years after, these connectivity constructions, when you look at the participant countries in the BRI route, they're able to increase their trade through those years by 23%, whereas the non-participant countries has a trade increase of 19%. So you can see clearly this kinds of connectivity help to promote trade activities. And not only that, I would also echo with the previous panelists. This is not just about connectivity, but also in a lot of ways, it's about upgrading the technologies, upgrading their industrial production, and therefore a lot more of these trades are value added and therefore benefit both countries or both parties.
Ambassador, to the point of upgrading, Serbia is also seeing a boost as a result. China has become the second largest investor in the country, and this section of the Belgrade-Novi Sad Railway just celebrated its one-year anniversary in March, and at the time, and it's transported about 3 million passengers. At the time, the Prime Minister said she considers it a turning point for Serbia to move forward and to modernize. And modernizing is a big key feature of all of this, isn't it?
It is very important, not only for Serbia, but for Hungary as well, for every country. We live in a very special age. We need fundamental changes in technologies, in connectivity, in transportation, and of course that needs a new age, a digital age, and the Belt and Road Initiative helps us with that. If I may add one thing to your debate about or discussion about the political issues, I think if there is connectivity, not only economic and transportation, but also connectivity on the level of ideas, political views, exchanges, then every problem can be solved via negotiation. And Hungary stands for solving the problems, the debates, the political disagreements by the way of communicating, connecting each other, discussing issues. So for technological development, modernization, and solving political disputes, the best way is not to criticize each other or fight with each other, but to work together, to cooperate, to have discussions, so connect each other.
Liang, I saw you nodding your head. It's one thing that we don't really hear when we talk about the Belt and Road Initiative, which is dialogue and opening up conversations and you know, and kind of this opportunity for different points of views to be shared as well. How important is that?
Well, it's very important because I think we are in a world that is multipolar. So different countries have their own histories, value systems, political systems, economic structures. And so it's very important that the countries have the dialogues and conversations and decide together what would be the mutual benefits for them. So the BRI is principled on extensive consultations, joint collaborations, and mutual benefits. And so I think this is very important. And, you know, when we had a BRI forum back in Beijing, the ministers of foreign affairs from Hungary visited, and he really passionately called for de-ideologize and depoliticize, you know, these economic ties and, you know, commercial activities and also these kinds of people-to-people exchanges. Because after all, I think, you know, the world is not really defined by all these differences and, you know, the oppositions, but rather I think there are a lot of common grounds for countries to work together and advance their prosperities and also to confront with the global challenges such as climate change.
All right, we're going to take a short break. We're going to have much more of this discussion when we come right back.
I see a country on the move.
There's my opportunity.
Is it good to change so fast?
Yes, but it's a challenge.
We have one foot in the future.
But we never forget our past.
We need to talk to one another.
And listen.
More than 1 billion voices telling their stories. Rediscovering China, only on CGTN.
Whether it's about your education, the home you live in, or the items you buy, your money has a story to tell. Because every business story is a human story. Global Business.
You're watching breaking news on CGTN.
You're watching CGTN with the latest market-moving headlines from around the world.
Welcome to the world today on CGTN.
Welcome back to The Heat. We're continuing our discussion about how the BRI is changing the face of Central and Eastern Europe. Before we went to the break, Liang was talking about these battery facilities in Hungary, and I think that's a good jumping off point for our ambassador to kind of discuss This shift from, the combustion engines to EVs, it's a shift that we're seeing all around the world, trying to go green. How is this helping Hungary in that transition?
It is a very important positive factor, a mover of Hungary's switching from the old technologies to the new greener technologies, not only in transportation, in electric car and battery industry, but also in electric generation, electricity generation, for example, for solar batteries and windmills and all those elements. And it's very important also as the digital revolution goes further in the whole economy. So the greening of the economy is necessary for every country. In Hungary, it is especially important issue because we shall be one of the best or leading country in Europe in the green technologies. That's why it's very welcome. The Chinese companies, Chinese investment in these fields are very welcome by the Hungarian government, and it adds up to the dynamism of the Hungarian economic development.
Ambassador, let me ask you a question about the European Union, which is already announcing its own infrastructure investment project called Global Gateway. They're getting there about 10 years later than China. They're trying to get European countries to join. There seem to be some concerns, conflicting attitudes among the European governments and various EU agencies over how to support this program. What do you make of it?
I think Europe was a little bit late. By understanding that the connectivity expansion is very much needed for the whole global economy. And Hungary, as a member of the European Union, of course, in this case, receives much less support within this new European program because it's aimed at countries outside Europe. So it is, for Hungary, it is a double-edged issue. Hungary, of course, supports every plan, every idea of increasing connectivity. But for us, it's the most important is to build up those factors, those already existing points of connectivity which already operates and which can be utilized more.
Einar, during the launch of the Global Gateway, European Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen said it was a better choice. So how does China look at this?
Well, I don't think it's a competition. I agree with the ambassador. The world is lacking in connectivity. It's not that there's an oversupply of infrastructure binding countries together. Anything is welcome, and this idea that somehow they're competitive is nonsense. If a truck carrying Chinese goods is traveling on a road, it doesn't matter if it was built by China or the U.S. or the EU, as long as it's bringing mutual prosperity to everyone involved. But, one of the important things I want to pick up on with both the ambassador said and also my friend Liang is that this is about sharing technology. China has a very, very different attitude towards the future. And part of that is that technology needs to be shared. It needs to be jointly developed. Otherwise, you're going to have a situation in which the countries that own the IP are going to be served by those who don't. And that is just going to set up more inequalities. So as with the vaccine, China is willing to share its technology, to set up entities, joint ventures, which can help everybody. And this is really, really important, as is this idea about education. In the old days, you needed to know about the U.S., your country, and maybe a few neighbors. Today, with the global supply chain, literally touching everybody every day, you need to know about everybody at a much greater depth than before. And a lot of this is going to depend on people having measurements. This idea that you have to have metrics. How do you determine that you're making progress in the global security initiative or global civilization initiative or global development initiative? I think it's incumbent on China and others within this grouping in the BRI to start coming up with ways in which they can have measurements where countries can see how they're doing and how to improve their progress.
Liang, let me ask you, kind of piggyback off what we were just discussing, this better choice comment. It almost gives, and basically what Einar was saying, investment's good all over the place. You would think infrastructure is good all over the place. You shouldn't have to choose between one or the other. If the project's coming your way, more of it. This kind of adversarial tone, what do you make of it?
Right, I think that would be counterproductive. And I agree with Einar that first of all, there's no oversupply of these connectivities. And second is, I think a lot of times cooperation and partnership work better. And third, I think even if it's competition, it's good to have constructive competition. I think there are some research that have shown because of BRI, now the United States and European countries start to think about connectivities, think about, infrastructure in, African countries, for example. So I think if this is competition, I think this is good because it helps to elevate everyone. It helps everyone to make progress. Now, for the Europeans project, I think I have several reservations. For one is I do believe they are late, but it's never, it's better to be late than never. But still, they're planning €300 in till 2027. So it's a relatively small scale, and they have been talking about this for a while, and nothing really has materialized yet. So I think there's a lot of delivering right from the plan to the actual execution. I think they should accelerate in order to really make that promise come true. And finally, they also talked about no political strings attached. But at the same time, I think the history have shown us that some of these European and Americans like to lecture, right? They like to enforce their own value systems, their own agenda upon others. So I'm a little bit skeptical as to how much they are able to really collaborate with other countries on equal footing. But that said, again, I think I agree with the panelists. It would be great if all these countries can join force and really roll out more infrastructure and other connectivities and other technological innovations kinds of projects to help all the other countries.
Ambassador Kusai, Hungary needs capital if it's going to have the type of technology it needs to catch up. We were just talking about the batteries in that sense. If the money's not coming from the West, if it's not coming from the EU, it seems natural that you would want to find sources, and China has been there for the last 10 years.
It's totally natural that you need capital, you need investments, then you look for it. And wherever it is available, you will take it from there. That's why China has become the largest foreign investor in Hungary last year. The previous year it was the second largest. So for the last 5-10 years, China is either the largest investor in Hungary or the second largest. So it's very important for us to get the necessary resources to develop our economy. And if no political conditions or other conditions attached, then naturally you will take that investment. I want to comment, by the way, on the issue what just my good friends just discussed, competition and cooperation. It's the two sides of the same coin for development. So you need competition between companies for economic result, for increased profits, for increased effectivity. But at the same time, you can have results only via cooperation. So the good thing is to find the right balance between the elements of competition and cooperation. And the Belt and Road Initiative gives a good chance to find that right balance between those two elements.
And Einar, you're talking about that balance. The other thing about the BRI that's so interesting, and you've been on auto broadcasts with me where we've talked about its impact in Latin America, in Africa, it's this interconnectivity. So can you talk to us not just about the impact in perhaps Europe, but also global trade? What has BRI meant for global trade, do you think?
Well, you can ask South America. That would be a good question for them. They'll tell you that it's meant a tremendous amount. Basically, they ignore. They've fallen into the cracks. A vacuum formed around it. China filled that vacuum. And as a result, trade has been booming with China, and it's allowed their economies to go forward. There are still problems. China is not going to solve every other country's issues. Those are up to the country itself. But to the extent that trade helps, China can certainly be there. And in terms of the connectivity, people often talk about debt trap diplomacy, et cetera, but they don't realize you cannot take one part of an engine and say, well, this is useless. It doesn't, do anything. It's when the engine is assembled, when you put all the parts together, that's when you can create the power. And that is exactly what the BRI is about. It is about assembling all of this infrastructure and then filling it in. And I think this is a very important part going forward, is that, during the message was that, look, we have the general outlines of the BRI. We filled in a lot of the infrastructure, but now it's time to do smaller and beautiful projects, basically attending to small and medium-sized business entities, which are really the lifeblood of every country in the world today. And allowing them to succeed and be competitive is really going to be a very, very big factor in how the BRI grows and continues to contribute.
Ambassador Kusai, I'm going to give you the last word on this. We've got about a minute left, and I'm going to use the engine analogy that Einar just used. Another component of putting this car together is also people-to-people exchanges, cultural exchanges, and we're seeing a lot of that as well. Can you talk to us about that?
For the people-to-people exchanges, the cultural, educational exchanges, there is, I consider there are two very important roles or promotion roles for them. First one is to mutually enrich both sides. We enrich both countries or both peoples by exchanges. We know others' culture, results, attitudes, philosophy, and it's mutual enrichment for everybody. The other important function is to create people, educate people who know each other and can later cooperate. So the cultural exchange is very important for the economic contacts, for the building of political dialogue, for every sphere, because for that we need in all countries, for Hungary, in Hungary and in China, people who really understand the other culture, the other people. That is the key building block for any further development of cooperation.
Perfectly said. I want to thank our guests. Great discussion. Really appreciate it. And that is it for this edition of The Heat. I'm Mike Walter in Washington, D.C. Thanks so much for being with us.